Hello, hello. It's another podcast today, and we will talk about bobbin lace because we both found it to be really relaxing, and of course, we will tell you what it is for those of you who may not know it as a technique or what are the possibilities with this lace. And then, yeah, we will show you our projects, what we're working on, what we already have done. And of course, we have another guest today, so stay tuned. And I guess Clara will tell us now what bobbin lace actually is.
So bobbin lace is basically very similar to weaving. So you work on a pillow. It might be a flat pillow or a round pillow, depending on the style of bobbin lace and also on the historic location of the lace that you're working on. You work with bobbins, mostly in pairs, like these ones. Bobbin works in a way that you have an active pair of bobbins and a few passive ones. So you pass the active pair of bobbins through the passive ones in an interlaced way. So there are two basic bobbin lace making motions, which is cross, which is when you put the left bobbin over the right one, and a twist, which is when you put the right one over the left one. And there are also three basic bobbin lace stitches. So there's a half stitch, which is cross twist. There's a linen stitch, which is cross twist cross, and a whole stitch, which is cross twist cross twist. So it's, in a way, it's really, really simple. You just have to learn these three stitches and learn the way how they are incorporated into a bobbin lace pattern. So when you work on your pattern, then you pin your lace onto the pillow in certain ways so that the tension is right and then it goes according to your pattern. So in the end, you take your pins out and then you have your finished bobbin lace pattern.
Unless you forget to make it twist or a cross at the edges, then it will unravel.
Yeah, but it's not unraveling. It's more of a. There might be loose ends, but it's not. So when you have a mistake, like 2 centimeters after you have finished your work, then you have to undo your whole bobbin lace in the same way that you did your bobbin lace. So it's not like you can take your thread and then pull out your thread and then it's undone. So this is really a problem.
Don't make mistakes.
Yeah, don't make mistakes. Yes.
Or see them really early. If you see them really early, you don't have to go back that much.
Sometimes mistakes get really obvious because then the thread is missing at a certain point. So, or your bobbin lace pair should be at a certain point and it isn't there. Sounds really simple. Is in a way also really simple, but you have to learn how to read technical drawings of bobbin lace making. So when you have your pattern on your pillow, you might have seen some bobbin lace designs before. They are just made of points or dots, which indicate where you put your pin in, and then lines, so to see how your active pair of bobbins is going. But that's not all of it. So normally you have a technical drawing too, where you see which stitch is used on which part of your design. So it's color coded. Sometimes it's not even color coded, but just showing the finished piece. So more trained lace makers might see a finished photo of a lace and then know how to work it. But normally you have a technical drawing with different colors and then you know, okay, red is a linen stitch, so I will linen stitch there.
And sometimes the color codes are equal in each country.
Yes, or in each book even, if you're working with books. Yeah.
Or also the names of the stitches. I think in UK are different than they are in continental Europe.
Yeah, possibly.
Probably. Not only that the translation is different.
Bobbin lace was made in so many countries, especially in Europe. So every country has its own books, its own designs, its own techniques. So
even each city or region.
yeah. It's so fascinating to see all the different styles. I've not arrived to a point where I am able to identify every single bobbin lace, because they're, in a way, some of them are really similar. So yeah, but we'll learn.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
definitely. I already can go to her and ask her if what's that,
or the internet.
or the internet, but it's easier to ask Clara.
Yes, you can always ask me if you want.
And this way I'm learning it. I'm more of the practical bobbin lace maker, and Clara has all the theory behind it.
More or less.
More than the eye has.
Will all come when you work with lace more and more.
And especially if I want to do a certain lace and to find how this one is done. And I'm more of, I find this picture and I want to do that. And maybe I find a way to do it, or even not, I don't know.
Yes, so then I might ask you how you got started with bobbin lace making. So what was your first starting point and your main inspiration?
The first time I learned about bobbin lace, that it exists, is actually at home. We always had a bobbin lace pillow laying around with some lace on it. And I actually have never seen my mother making some lace, but I knew she could do it. And that was basically it until 2 years ago. And back then I wanted to make a corset and add some lace, but I didn't find any lace I liked.
Problem.
Yeah, I wanted something that looked icy, like
because you had your ice cream costume.
Yeah, which is still not finished, but yeah. And I found one lace and I went to my mother and said, "Ma, I want to make this. How can I do it?"
Did you find a pattern? Or
no, it was just a picture.
Okay.
And she looked at me and said,
have fun.
Okay, we can try. And actually, one day before Christmas, 2 years ago, she started making a sample. And she was really angry with me because I just came with it without any information, or I didn't told her before.
How could you if you didn't even know how it worked?
Yes, but on Christmas doing something like that is maybe a little mean. But she did it. She made a sample. She told me how to do it. And I never touched it again. Afterwards. Yes, I had to admit that this was a little bit too difficult to start with, to make the very first lace ever. And so I didn't make any lace. My mother sent me a pillow. I remember that 2 or 3 months later, I got a pillow from her with a lot of bobbins. And I didn't start on it because I had so many other things to do. And then 2 weeks ago, I started my very first lace. And it works very well. In the beginning, I was like, okay, I don't get a thing. I can't manage to do the start. But right now, I have almost 20 centimeters or so. And really, now I think I would be able to make the lace I wanted to do 2 years ago.
We'll talk about the exact lace and your specific lace project later.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's how I started with bobbin lace. And you started way earlier, I guess.
Yes, so I started 2 years earlier. So basically, there is a person in my family who's doing bobbin lace for, I don't know for how many years, but if you're watching this, hi. She started, she made bobbin lace, and when I was a kid, I just saw her work, but I wasn't that invested in textile crafts, so I just knew it existed, but I didn't pay any further attention because when you see lace without knowing how it's made, then it's just a piece of lace. So you don't understand how it's done. So it's not that special, I think, in a way, than it is when you know how it's done.
And especially with modern lace, you always assume that it is made by a machine. And I think somehow we started thinking that something made by machine is not that worthy.
Yeah, but it is. It's just different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So then 2 years ago, it was during the pandemic. I'm not sure how it specifically started, but we were talking a lot about lace making.
Yeah.
And then I got some beautiful old magazines of bobbin lace making. So these two, they are from the 1920s, I believe, showing a lot of beautiful designs, and I really like those. So I just got interested a bit more about how to actually do bobbin lace. So I contacted this person in my family, and she very kindly sent me bobbins and thread and books with which I could learn how to make bobbin lace. So this is how I started. I just started with a book. I'll talk about this one later too, and made the basic stitches, which I just talked about. So half stitch, full stitch, linen stitch. Just worked those, practiced, and then got more invested in actually making lace that I could use for historical garments. So when you spend so much time on a lace, and you have a lace in the end, but nothing to do with it. So my goal now is to actually have a project in mind, because then your motivation to actually do it is a bit higher.
Yeah.
And
also, my mother told me she stopped making bobbin lace because she had no use for it. She does not like those doilies who are laying around and just getting dusty or yellow. And that's why I never saw her making some lace. She did it, I guess, before I was born. So, and that's also in 20 years she hadn't done any bobbin lace, and then I'm coming around and saying, "Mama, I want to do that." I'm really, I'm somewhat baffled that she was able to really create this difficult lace after all those years. So somehow you apparently really get to know how to use those bobbins once you have started with it.
I mean, it's just like riding your bike. I don't think that you really unlearn something. Yeah, maybe you have to just re-remember, but then I think the basics are in your head and they're never gone.
Yeah, and also now that I'm doing the lace, you say twist, cross, twist, cross. It's like a song in my head. Twist, cross, twist, cross, cross, twist.
Yeah.
And sometimes even with melody, and that's quite funny.
I think there might be, we have to research more, some old bobbin songs that we sang while making bobbin lace.
Yeah.
So when you were sitting in the group, in the village or something, maybe you would look for some bobbin lace song.
That would be funny.
Yeah.
But we would have to make the same lace if we want to sing together.
Yeah, I don't know how these songs are constructed, so how these are, if they really match the pattern that you're working on, or if it's just rhythm.
Oh, that would be really cool to find something. Yeah. And especially, we talked about this before, but maybe in different languages how it was sung, or maybe with different lace patterns or types of lace. I don't know. I find it really cool. And I find this book really cool because now I have new ideas to do something.
We'll show some pictures of the book.
Yeah. So that you can get as psyched as I am.
As we both are. Yeah, so that's how I started basically, and then it just evolved. Like I said, last year I made a petticoat out of lace, which took quite some time, and now we're both working on our blouses, which have bobbin lace in it, so which we show later too. Yeah.
And what I find really fascinating, what you did, you actually did some samples. What I didn't do.
You mean as when I started?
Yeah.
Yes.
You did some samples
Yeah.
and tried things out, and I was like, I want to do that, and I'm doing it right now.
I mean, you still had an introduction by your mother, but I was just working with books.
Yeah.
So the person in my family, she's living quite far away, so it's not that I could just visit her. I mean, I could have, but it was the pandemic, so it wasn't really an option. So I just learned through books.
Yeah. So to have the motivation to do those, because I'm always like, if I don't use it, why should I do it? I hate making samples because I don't use it. And that you have this motivation to do it nevertheless is really...
I found it even more difficult to make samples, not of a finished closed piece like a doily or like an application or something, but to make a strip of lace, because then you could just go endlessly on and on. But when do you stop?
Yeah.
So, but also when you have your blouse and need like 2 meters of lace, it's really a lot of work, depending on the pattern. So this too is, but then you have an end inside.
Yeah, you know how much you need.
This was an introduction of our bubble lace journey. So now we come to our next category, which is
the bookshelf.
Which is the bookshelf. Before the name now. Is it the first time we are having this category?
Yeah.
We always plan to insert it into the podcast, but then okay.
We run out of time.
Yeah. So I want to show you one book which every bobbin lace maker probably has seen in his life. So every German, I think, which is this one. I really recommend starting with this book when you start learning bobbin lace and don't have anyone to ask you, because this is really a step-by-step instruction on how to work your bobbin lace. So you really start with a basic strip of lace, which has the 3 basic bobbin lace stitches that I talked about earlier. And then with every new design, you evolve a little bit and learn a new technique. And it's really, really well described. So I highly recommend this one. Then the second book that I worked with, you might show now.
Of course. Yeah. It's also the book I worked with, the first lace edit. And you basically have the pattern and the picture, how it would look, and in the beginning some instructions, which stitches I use. So for me, this was a really good book to start with the knowledge I already had with my mom, which my mother gave me. So here you also see these different colors. So every color is for a certain bobbin lace stitch, which is really handy if you have. Or I'm working on this lace, for example, this side here, and I have the book in the background and always can have a little glimpse. Oh, what was it? Oh, it's purple, so it's a half stitch, I guess. I think it's a linen. It's a linen stitch. Okay, then it's the linen stitch. But I know how to work it. I don't know how to name it. So I think that's really, really handy. And there are many different difficulties. Yeah. So you can have some really intricate and some more or less simple ones. So yeah, I find it pretty handy to say. And what is defining, or in which way is bobbin lace more difficult? So what I mean, a lace just because it's wider doesn't necessarily mean that it's more difficult than a smaller one. I think it depends on the technique that you use. But also, I think the more bobbins you use, the difficulter it gets, because you have to manage all those bobbins. Yeah, so it's more of a theoretical difficulty. It's not the lace pattern itself that becomes more difficult. Yeah, maybe. It's true. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You have those 3 stitches. You basically work always with those. And then you have to manage all your bobbins. You have to not forget when to use which stitch, and that's basically it. So the more you have to deal with it, or the more bobbins you have, it gets difficult. Or the more you change each stitch, I think, because if you have 10 times linen stitch next to each other, it's easier than having linen stitch, half stitch, cross stitch. No, not cross.
What did you say? Half stitch?
Half stitch.
Linen stitch and whole stitch.
Yeah. And if they change completely random, it's more difficult, I guess.
But I think when you're working with the design, you see the system, you understand the system that's behind this lace. So it's rare that it's just all over the place, even if it's not reflected.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And maybe it's also how long your pattern repeat is. If it's shorter, you can get in some kind of meditational cross stitch, cross twist, cross twist. But if it's really long and you have to know each row or each segment, because you don't, or I don't work in rows. Do you work in rows?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I work in rows, but the pattern itself is worked in, depending on where you work, you have 3 different parts.
Yeah.
That can be worked simultaneously.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you basically also work in each row, but in segments in the lace.
I don't have one active pair that runs across the whole pattern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's different to weaving, actually, because in weaving you always work completely through, unless you do the pattern weaving or carpet weaving. Then you stop at certain points.
You can charge as well.
Yeah. And in bobbin lace, you actually only weave certain parts so that you get those holes. Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't get those holes.
Yeah. So lace is just
weaving in small.
Yeah. Creating holes.
Basically, yes.
And selling it for a lot of money.
That's why weaving is easier, because you run completely through. And with bobbin lace, you have to stop and restart and stop and restart. You can do it with machine, obviously, but you can't do everything with machine, especially if you do motif work.
Yeah. So sometimes there are lace patterns that are more comfortable to make than others. I really like when you have just your pattern and you work and don't have to really change. But there are also a lot of patterns where you have your bobbins, finish this part, this segment, you have to put them away, so by the side, and then you take the other ones. And if that changes too often, then for me it's a bit unnerving, because it's not that comfortable to work this way. But I mean, the more complex, the wider your bobbin lace, the more normal it gets that you have to change your parts of bobbins. Yeah, so another thing that I'd like to add to this book here. So torsion lace is a lace that is really geometric and really easy to make. I find it really easy to make. So this might be a really good thing for beginners to actually work with this book or any other torsion lace book, because it's really easy to hold the tension, because I think the filled spaces are distributed really evenly, so this way it's easy to hold the tension of your threads. Yeah.
The lace I wanted to do the Christmas back 2 years ago was definitely no torsion lace.
What kind of lace was that?
I guess Reticella.
What?
Reticella.
Reticella.
Reticella. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And with some peaks, or it was basically built up of triangles.
So like these Van Dyke edges?
Yeah. And this is not so easy to hold the tension there. Let's say for me, because I did it for the very first time. So yeah, I did also make many mistakes. I've always forgot to make the twist at the side, so it opened a little bit.
Okay.
But maybe one day I will remake it.
This is how you learn. So you have to make mistakes.
Yeah. But I suggest don't start with the most difficult thing you can find.
Yeah. Start with this book step by step, or any other book, and just do your work. Yeah. There's another book that I'd like to show you. This one is called The Encyclopedia of Needlework by Thérèse de Villemont, which is this book. It's about 100 years old, maybe older.
And it has even a gold side.
You might see that, possibly. I don't know. Yes. This book describes every possible needlework technique that might be out there. Maybe not, but like the most famous
European ones.
European ones, yeah. So there's a section about embroidery, like you can see here, maybe. There's a thing about crocheting, knitting. So you basically learn every technique and then have a few basic patterns that you can work with. There's also a big part of needle lace. So when I started my needle lace project a few years ago, I also learned how to do it by this book. And there's also a section about bobbin lace with a few patterns in them also. Maybe I find some here. Like you can see on this page here. So this book is available online on archive.org, I think, where the whole book is scanned, so you can just look it up online. But also I found that there were a lot of versions to find on eBay or on the other sites. So it must have been very common to use this book in the earlier days because
the Bible of needlework.
Yes, in a way, yeah. It's small and handy. It's like a church book.
And it has the gold leaf.
Yeah.
As a Bible does.
That's right. So I highly recommend using this book too. Yeah. At least for the start. So when you want to get more specific in your techniques, then this is not for you, but for the beginning, it's a really good book.
Yeah. So now we have shown you almost all books we have, right?
I have so many other
using books we are using. I don't have any books about bobbin lace, so
not yet.
Not yet. That's true.
Maybe.
Come, I guess.
I'm certain we'll do another podcast episode about bobbin lace making, so we'll show some other books the next time. Or some general lace books. Yeah. Okay, so now we come to our next section, which is work in progress. So do you want to start showing us your work in progress?
Okay. One of the work in progress is a blouse. I already made this blouse, and now I wanted to make a more summery blouse because I'm longing for summer. I'm longing for summer, and I made a mock-up for this blouse, which it's a 1903 blouse with those really voluminous sleeves down here.
Like bishop sleeves, I think they're called.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I hope that's right.
And it has
like pads or areas on your shoulder on which the sleeve is.
Yeah. How is it?
You showed it last week to me. It's a really interesting construction.
And the pattern doesn't fit a body. Definitely, the pattern I used is not made for a human body. So I had to make many changes, especially elongate the chest and the back area so that it would fit. And my idea is to make those shoulder pads out of lace and having one lace running down here. And that's the lace I'm making right now. And as I said, I have almost the half of it. And the shoulder pads are shoulder pads is the wrong word.
Shoulder piece,
okay.
I'd say.
The shoulder piece I will make of some lace I bought 2 years ago on the Christmas market. It's basically a doily or an oval doily. So I thought I will add it here. But for that, I have to adjust this piece again since the doily is a little more rounder. So, yeah, the mock-up isn't yet finished. I have still some pieces that don't work. But I'm getting there, I hope. And the lace is also, I started 2 weeks ago. And what have you calculated? 1.5 centimeter per day, approximately.
Yeah.
So I still have a little to go.
What kind of thread are you using?
I'm actually using white cotton thread. It's a crochet thread. I've bought 2 crochet actually, but I had another yarn, and this yarn is actually the same thickness as the one of the doilies. So I wanted it to have the same thickness, so the same aesthetic basically. But what I didn't take account for is that the lace I'm using is a little more yellowish than the bought doilies. So maybe I will bleach the one I made, but that is really scary. Or I will dip the other doilies into some tea and dye them a little bit yellower so that they work together. I'm not sure yet.
I think that is less risky than bleaching.
Yeah.
Your bobbin lace.
But maybe I will make it too yellow and then it's brown.
But I think you can wash it out.
Yeah?
Yeah. But maybe some of you out there have already bleached their bobbin lace. Such a specific niche thing to do, but okay.
Or maybe you have yellow journals.
Yes.
So let us know.
Yeah, if you have any information on that, we would be happy to know.
Absolutely. I don't want to mess around with this lace. Yeah, that's my project. So what's your project?
My project. I cannot really show you because I have to pull up the bobbin lace pillow. I'm planning on making a 1900s blouse, which has some lace details in it. So I'm currently making the collar, which is just a wide strip of lace. And then I'll add a few bobbin lace strips also in the blouse. So I'm having a yoke here and then some.
Yoke was the word I was looking for.
Yes, yeah. It might be a yoke also.
Yeah.
But it's just a shoulder piece on yours.
Yeah, in my case, it's just a shoulder piece, but I think passe is the German word for yoke, so that would fit.
Yeah. Now we have a word. We have learned something. So yes, I have a yoke on the front and back, and then I would add some lace on the seam where you sew your yoke onto the rest of the body. Yeah, I decided to use a torsion lace design. So we were talking to our special guest that would come later to this podcast. In this podcast, and she told us that torsion lace wasn't actually used on garments, but more on. Torsion is the French word for. Now I don't know the English word. Was ist denn? Ein Tuch oder Lappen oder.
Linen? No.
I have to look it up. So torsion in French is actually, or torchon, as you say, is actually a towel, like a hand towel or something. So you basically use this kind of lace to sew it on towels, on doilies, on your bed sheets or bed linens. So it wasn't used for clothing, but I had already started my lace, so I didn't want to undo it. So basically the person that I'm making this for back then, she just picked the lace from these bed linens and used it for her blouse.
Because I was thinking when you had this time when you could do the machine lace, there was some lace everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you would have mixed together every lace you could get if you had that much money. So you possibly have also used torchon lace. I'm not sure about that, but we nowadays can buy is almost always torchon lace.
Yeah.
So every lace we use nowadays, bobbin lace, is actually the wrong lace.
Yeah, but later I will talk about a trip that I went to a museum in France, which is about machine lace making. And they are actually not only able to make torsion lace. They can make all kinds of lace. So more of a closed lace design. So like I'm not sure, we're not experts in any way, but the more closed a pattern is, the easier it is for machines to actually make this lace. So I haven't seen any Venetian lace made by machine. Maybe that's possible. I mean, machines are able to make all kinds of lace, let's say.
Only crochet lace, that's not possible.
Yeah, that's not possible. Yeah. But I mean, you see, especially torsion lace designs when you're buying lace in a sewing store. Yeah.
That's why I thought maybe it started in that time around that you have more of the torsion lace in the clothing too. Because as much lace as you use, you needed to get it fast or made it fast so that you could afford it. That was my thinking. I don't know. Actually, maybe we should get some lace pictures of lace blouses and analyze them.
Yes.
It would be an idea. So that then we can tell you.
Yeah. So yeah, back to my blouse.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. These kind of conversations are. So basically, what I did. So torsion lace, as I said, is really simple in the way it is constructed. So when you want to design your own lace patterns, you can just take gridded paper. So I just drew out this grid pattern on Illustrator and then printed it out. Then I made some sketches. So the areas that are filled by a linen stitch, for example, I drew them out just to be able to see how these areas are looking in the whole lace design. And then what I did is I started to draw out the whole pattern so that I know which thread is running in which direction. This really helps to actually get your lace design functioning and working. So then I redrew the lace design onto another piece of paper to actually use on my lace pillow, and then I started. Yeah. Might seem very simple this way, but
it is.
I'm working on it. I'm not done yet. I think I'll need more 15 centimeters, then I might be done. I just measured out my circumference of my neck, and it's about 36 centimeters, which I wouldn't have thought. Like you have this piece of paper, which is enough here, and it's even shorter than your neck circumference. So you really need a lot of bobbin lace for everything. So when you're really making lace for a blouse or something, you need a lot.
Yeah. Will you use the same pattern for the yoke?
No, not. I'll use a similar design. So I want to take elements from this bobbin lace and just put it into this pattern. But I'm not planning on using the exact same pattern because it's too wide. I think it would be too wide when you have it in here. Maybe I'll make half the size of it, like 2-3 centimeters. And also
ask a lot.
Yes, that too. I mean, what you could do if you need a lot of lace, that you do smaller strips of lace and then sew them together instead of making a wide one.
That's true.
If it looks good in your design.
And I think I saw some lace design or lace blouses which have 3 or 4 laces sewn together, which can be really cool. You can also overlap them sometimes so that you get a kind of fold or pleat.
Another thing that you can do if you have several strips of lace that you are sewing together on your neck is that you are making the circumference of the lace strips gradually smaller. This way you can decrease or you can really fit it to your neck because your neck is getting a bit smaller around this area here. So this way you can make it more shape to your neck instead of having the collar stand up like this because the lace is just sturdy and stiff and standing up. So this is also a thing you could do. when you're having several strips of lace.
Will you add to your lace some boning?
No, I don't think so. I think it's too delicate and too thin. Because was that a thing back then?
Yeah. I found some samples with boning which were made of thread. No. Steel thread.
Okay.
And they were laid like little waves.
Yeah.
And then the ends were made in little circles so that they won't damage the lace. And then they were sewn in, I think, 2 here, one in the front and one in the back usually. And because they are in the wave form, they're really bendy, but they still standing the lace or pulling the lace up.
Like was it made when your whole collar was made of lace, or when they just had a small strip of lace?
Both. I saw it on an entire lace made body.
Wow.
So
yeah, maybe that's something I could try out if it's too. Yeah,
I thought about it, using it, and yeah, I don't know how it actually works. I just saw the pictures
and how comfortable it is to wear.
Yeah. But if it starts crumbling down, it may be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were also a time when you had those collars which had these points to the ears.
Mm-hmm.
They were definitely boned in some way.
Yeah, you could also starch your lace.
Yeah, that's fine. But I think that would feel really bad.
I don't know.
I'm not really used to this color yet, so I feel this all the time, like I'm moving and thinking, what's that?
Yeah.
But what I think is worse is the cuff. If the cuff is too small, that I feel all the time.
I often pull up my sleeve.
Yeah.
So if you can't do that, I
definitely can't do that.
Yeah, I'll be so historic to the minutes. You have to get used to it. I mean, you'll get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I already more used to this kind of sleeves because it has this band.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, I always felt like I'm pulling against something. And now I don't feel it anymore. The only thing I sometimes feel is that it's here a little bit too tight. But I think that was a mistake in my construction. Mm-hmm. If I would add some width here, it's only maybe 1 centimeter or so. Then I wouldn't feel it anymore. Next time.
Yeah, that's how you learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add is, as I said, I want to add some lace here. So when the yoke part and the other bodice part are sewn together, what I think I'll do, I'll see if I really make that. So the yoke is really curved here in this part. So I'm thinking of making the lace in this shape already. So there's another lace that I made a few years ago that I'll show you later where I did this too. But this way, especially if you have wider strips of lace, it may be better to make them in shape. I don't know if this was a thing to do. I don't think it was a thing.
Well, you did it with crochet lace, definitely.
Yeah.
And also with cutting lace. So I would think that sometimes you did it, especially for a yoke.
I mean, yeah, especially if you did it just for yourself, if you had a specific design in mind, but you couldn't just mass produce lace and then fit it to your. So, yeah, this is what I'm planning to do. I don't have a mock-up yet of the blouse, so it's just the lace that I've started. So the next step would be to make a mock-up of my blouse and then to, start sewing and more bobbin lace making.
Lace definitely takes the most time. Sewing already takes a lot of time if you want to make it properly, especially for the body. Mm-hmm. But the lace is the thing that really slows down.
Yeah.
But it's also meditating.
And a lot of fun. Yeah, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah. So I think now we are on a section from the archives since I haven't done any lace yet or any bobbin lace yet. It's your part.
Yes. So this is an 1880s corset cover that I made a few years ago. So corset covers were worn over your corset and under your blouses or under the things that were visually seen by the public, let's say this way. So normally corset covers were worn to hide the lines that might come through because of your corset. Or do you have another?
And they were also often protecting the outer garment from the corset, especially if you have those clamps in front.
Yes.
Those metal clamps, so that the outer garment wouldn't tear if you get stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also why you have those corset covers.
Yeah. So the pattern is from the Keystone guide. I put the exact name in here because I don't remember it exactly. And then I modified this basic bodice pattern that I got from this book to fit to this corset cover. So I modified the pattern that it has a rectangular shape. And then I wanted to add some bobbin lace. So this was maybe a few months after I started learning bobbin lace. I've worked with patterns here, so these are not self-designed or something. Most of the patterns were taken from this book here. So a really handy book when it comes to these patterns. So this is a little heart-shaped pattern that I found really comfortable to make. This pattern in here, as you might see, is rounded. So it's fit to the round shape of the neckline. So what I did here is to scan the pattern to redraw the pattern in Illustrator to make it, to transform it into a brush tool and then to draw out the neckline of this pattern in this brush tool. So I would have the bobbin lace pattern evenly spread out in the curved line. So this way there's no sticking up of the lace when wearing it. It's just very nicely shaped onto the neckline.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Modern tools are really handy if you do antique lace.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So this lace here, I just made a strip of lace and then let it run into the armhole. It doesn't go entirely around the armhole, but I'm not very convinced that it was a good idea because it really gets stuck in the armhole when I move, so it doesn't look very good anymore, which is a shame. But other than that, I'm really happy with this corset cover. Yeah,
it's a really neat work.
Also, thank you. Also, it's a nice project. I didn't need a lot of lace, so this was maybe 12 centimeters on each side. This one was a bit longer, but it's really small, so it didn't take as long either. So it's a really nice project to have when you want to make lace, but don't want to spend too much time on lace. Yeah.
But it's a shame that it's almost always covered by a blouse or something.
Yeah.
So only you know that you put all that time in it.
But I mean, I made another petticoat made of lace, so...
Well, that's true.
I could wear it as an outer garment, but no. So I want to show you another lace strip that I made. So this one is just really a lace strip. And for me, this is one of the, maybe the most beautiful designs I've made. So it's not my own, it's also from a book called Wiener Spitzen. I'll put the name in the description. This is also quite a simple lace, I'd say. So it has a lot of spiders. So these small bits where you have bobbin pairs running together and running out again is called a spider.
How many legs do they have?
3 per.
So it's not a spider. Spider has 8 legs, right?
But the main design is just called spider.
Yeah, I know, but I find it something.
You mean because of the animal?
Yeah.
I was really confused. I thought, what do you know so much about bobbin lace spiders?
No, I
No.
don't know anything about bobbin lace spiders, only about the real spider.
Okay. So basically, these are just a lot of spiders, unreal spiders.
White spiders, so they don't
Yeah.
aren't that scary.
Yeah, these are the kind of spiders that I like. Yes. So this was also the very first project that was really wide. So I had a lot of trouble working with this many bobbins on my pillow. It had about 26 pairs, which was like 52 bobbins, which is, my pillow is not big enough for so many pairs. Yes. I'm not really sure what to do with it. Maybe I'll make a modern dress and just put it in here as a neckline. But also I'm a bit scared of washing it. So I'd have to be really careful to wash it when I'm washing the dress, because modern dresses, I'd wear them more often, and I'd wash them more often than historical ones. So let's see. But I really love this design.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not long enough to make a color of it.
No, it's just I printed it out onto a piece of paper, so it's as long as the piece of paper gets. So it's about 29 centimeters. Yeah. So not really sure. Also, the thing is, unlike knitting or something, when you cut off the edges, I mean, you could basically weave in every loose thread and continue, but it would be really visible. So it's not just like with knitting where you can just put in a new yarn and then continue working. So you really have to know when you cut the piece that's really done.
Yeah.
It's not as convenient as other techniques, lace making. Yeah. These are my two projects from the archives. So now we come to our next segment, which is highlighting history. I want to talk about machine lace making. So at the beginning of this year, I went to Calais and visited a lace museum. So many of you might know Calais, many of those who live here in Western Europe might know Calais is a place where you can take the ferry up to England. As it was in northern France, so really close to England, it was also a big textile industry in the northern parts of France, and especially in Calais. Machine-made lace that resembles bobbin lace is called Levers lace and was named after John Levers, who partly developed this kind of machine. The technology behind these lace machines is a till lace. So you have a till ground and then working with your thread to create shapes and patterns. So this was developed in Nottingham, which was also a really rich place for the textile industry. But then, due to economic and social problems in this region, many people came to northern France to work there. So slowly, a textile industry grew in northern France as well. There's not much left of this. There are still a few companies working and producing this kind of lace, but also there is a museum about bobbin lace, which is called Cité de la Dentelle et de la Mode, which you can visit. And this is what I did. So the museum is a really modern building. It's made of glass, which is sort of a wavy pattern. And if you look closely, the glass is patterned with a punch card pattern. So I'll talk about punch cards later, but basically these were defining the lace pattern. So it's a really cool feature for a lace museum.
Absolutely.
I looked up the architecture firm, so maybe there are architecture fans out there. It's Flint, which is a South French architecture firm. Also, what I liked right next to the museum was a graffiti piece of a bobbin lace design, which I also find really cool. So there are many different steps involved in creating a lace design. So first of all, you need a designer who traces out the lace design. Then there's a person who's transcribing this into a technical drawing. Then in the next step, someone needs to create punch cards based on this technical drawing. So these are normally or these were normally manually made. So there's some kind, it looks like a small piano, and you just push certain buttons, and this way a certain position on your punch card is being punched. So then next step would be to sew these punch cards together to have a continuous line of punch cards.
But those were paper punch cards. Because before that, they were sometimes made of wood.
Oh, yeah. These were in the museum were made of punch cards. These were made of paper. So the next step, which is like the most time-consuming step, is to thread the whole machine. So normally this isn't done. Normally you have existing threads that are just changed out. But I think when I was in the museum, they told me that you needed 2 weeks and 2 people working on this machine to thread the whole machine. So they are just, especially the finer the thread, the more threads you need to actually fit textile. So this is a lot of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And usually you use one machine to make a similar pattern and use similar threads, because when a machine stands still, you lose money. Yeah. That's basically the calculation.
Yeah, it still is today. Yeah. Yep. So basically, leaf lace really is the same as weaving. So the technique is very similar to weaving. And the way the machine is constructed is also very similar to the weaving process. So you have your warp threads that are running vertically, and then there are certain so-called bobbins, but they don't look like lace, handmade lace bobbins. They are basically discs, golden discs, that are put into a carriage, and this carriage is like a pendulum swinging back and forth while the warp threads are moved sideways. So this way, the pendulum carriage with the bobbin is creating an interlace pattern. It is a lot of work threading each bobbin, and there's a whole process behind doing this. We'll put some videos also in the description which show how it's made still today. I also put some links of with more information if you want to have more information about that. So the speed in which these machines are working is also depending on the material that you use. So back then they only used cotton or linen or something, but these materials aren't very stretchy, so the machine can't be too fast, because then the whole threads would be pulled apart and
as I said, when the machine stands still, you lose money.
Yeah. So nowadays they can work a bit faster because you mostly use elastane or lycra or something, which is a bit more forgiving. Yeah. So in this museum, you actually saw the whole steps from preparing the machine to making the lace to actually afterwards repairing the lace that is produced, dyeing the lace, cutting the lace, like inspecting the lace. So this is all shown really well in this museum, and it was a lot of fun just walking through it and learning about machine lace, because in a way it's so different to handmade lace, but really worth watching.
I will go there one day too.
Yeah, again. I mean, it's not that far from where we live, so it's just a few hours to drive. But yeah. Besides this exhibition, there was also an exhibition about handmade lace, which spans from a bobbin lace to needle lace to other form. I don't know. Yeah, filet lace was also there. So it was a really beautiful exhibition of really old to more contemporary pieces of handmade lace. And you also could see some old pictures of people doing bobbin lace, or some old lace pillows were positioned there as well. And also what I really liked, because we're also really interested in historical costumes, there was also a small exhibition about historical costumes. So there were some pieces with lace being incorporated into the costume, but also pieces without any lace. So there was an 1830s dress that I liked really much, an 1850s dress with a beautiful needle lace color. There was a 18th century piece. I don't know the exact date anymore. This was really cool. And the whole museum is also having temporary exhibitions of modern garments too. So parts of these were made by students from fashion schools, but also from designers. I don't really know about this part because I've spent so much time in the lace exhibitions that I hadn't any energy to see the others too. But I think it's really worth it. It's really big, and you get to see a lot of things. Yeah. So I'd also like to thank the museum for being able to publish these photos in here. Thanks for permitting us to publish them.
So last section today is Creators of the World. As you know, last time I had already had guest Özge, and this time it's Talita. And Talita is a German fellow costumer, as we are, and she has made an apprenticeship in bobbin lace making, basically. And she can tell you a little more. So enjoy. And we are, or I have to say, I already learned a lot watching her making bobbin lace, so I got better in it. So maybe you too.
Enjoy and bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Talita Wolf. I am 31 years old and I am a professional dressmaker and costume designer and also a bobbin lace maker. I live in the east of Germany, in Leipzig, where bobbin lace making actually has a quite great tradition. People in Saxony have been making bobbin lace for about 500 years now, whereas in the very southwest of Germany, where I originally come from, it is almost unknown. I started bobbin lace making when I was, I think, 23 years old. So I have not been doing this for very long, because, as I said, in my home, nobody really did this or had heard of it. And I first came to the idea in, I think it was 2013, when I was visiting Italy with my parents. And we saw a woman sitting down outside on the street in front of her house, and she was making bobbin lace. And my parents asked me, Talita, do you know what she's doing? We have never seen this. And I knew it from photographs, but I had no idea how it worked. And I told them, yes, she's making lace. And my father said, okay, this is actually something that you would like to do, don't you? It looks really complicated. It's textile. It must be cool for you. And I was like, well, yes, maybe. And so he said, okay, I'll buy you a starter kit for Christmas. And he actually did. And so in 2014, I started to make bobbin lace. This starter kit included just one book and my lace pillow and some bobbins. And it actually is not the usual way to learn bobbin lace making just through books. But for me, it worked pretty well. So this was the book that was included. And I really liked it. It worked really good. So for the beginning, but I soon realized that it was just not enough information. So I bought more books, much more books. And yeah, after a while, I started asking myself if I was doing it right, because you don't find any information on, or you didn't at that time, you didn't find any information about bobbin lace making on the internet. And I mean, books, it's okay, but I thought it would be better to actually see a teacher and ask her whether I did it right, what I could improve. And so I found a holiday workshop in Annaberg-Buchholz, which is also in Saxony. And so the very region where they did or made bobbin lace for centuries, the major region in Germany. And yeah, I found a holiday workshop and took part in it, and asked the teacher if she thought I did good, or what I could improve. And she was very satisfied with what I was doing. And I knew at that time that they also offered some kind of 3-year apprenticeship, which was basically that you had to come one weekend every month and learned a new technique every time, and then you had homework, so that was controlled the next time you met. And after 3 years you would get a certificate. And I asked her if she thought that I was ready to do this, and she confirmed. And so in 2016 I started this apprenticeship. It went parallel with my university, so it was a bit complicated, but I think I did well, and I finished it in 2019. And 1 year ago, I finished university as well, and started to do costume design and sewing, and also bobbin and lace making professionally. But it's not my main job anymore. So people have been asking me if bobbin lace making is something that you can really do as a full-time job, and something that you really can gain money with and live on that. And I must say, I myself haven't tried yet, but I know from other people that it is really difficult, or at least in the end impossible today. There are 3 or 4 women in Germany that really are known and popular for doing for making bobbin lace. And they, in the first place, they give classes like weekend workshops or even online classes. And on the other hand, they produce books in which they explain different bobbin lace techniques and design patterns, which they also present in these books. But as far as I know, they all have other jobs besides. So when I was thinking of what kind of job I wanted to do after university, I never considered to make bobbin lace only, but a mixture of bobbin lace classes and working on costumes. I must say that the combination of costume design and bobbin lace making is nowadays rather unusual, and I think it gives me another focus. Most of the people I met when I was doing this bobbin lace apprenticeship were in their 50s or even their 60s and had already retired from work, or were about to do this after they were they had finished the apprenticeship. And it's interesting that they had, or most of them had, another aesthetic than me. Many of them focused on making decoration objects, like for Christmas or Easter, something you could hang to your windows or something like that. And I never did things like that. I always focus on how I can insert these lace into clothing. And I don't really focus on historical clothing, although I love historical lace, much more than modern bobbin lace. But I often try to reconstruct really old antique laces, which are about 400 to 500 years old, and use them in modern clothing. I'd like to show you some of my very favorite laces. They're all reconstructions from actual old ones that I found on several online exhibitions of museums, like the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam or the Met Museum in New York. They have quite large online collections with super detailed photos, and it's so much fun to just scroll through all these laces and try to reconstruct them and do something else with them. This is one project. I hope you can see it well. It's 2 borders of, I think, 80 centimeters each, and I want to insert them into a dress quite soon. This is a very, very new project. It's gonna be a whole dress. This is just a small patch I made for trying. As you can see, I also use color. Antique laces usually are white or sometimes black, and color in bobbin lace, it's rather new. It's an invention of the 20th century, and I think it's difficult to use color in lace. You really have to be careful. If you use too much, it won't look good. So I basically concentrate on dark tones or pastels, and always just one tone or two that are pretty close beneath each other. And I have here a really, really big project. I can wind it up. These are already, I think, 4 or 5 meters. I want to make a whole historical collar of it, and I will need about 15 meters to accomplish it. So I have a lot of work to do still. And of course, I can show you some projects I've already finished, which have similar laces on it. So here we go. In 2020 and 2021, I had a really, really big project at university. It was about constructing and sewing 2 historical costumes, one for a woman and one for a man. I was free to choose which century I would do or which epoch. And I chose Dutch clothing of the early 17th century, which is basically the time of Vermeer, with these really huge white collars, which are full of bobbin lace. And you can see in the pictures how it turned out. I actually wanted to do more than I could accomplish, and I finished all the laces for the men's costume, but when it came to the woman's costume, I was not able to finish all the laces, so unfortunately I had to use machine-made lace in the end. And I still have not finished those lace bands. So I have the collar here, and I can show you. So you see it's really the typical shape of early 17th century, as you can see it in so many paintings. And the lace border is also pretty close to original 17th century lace. And I also have here these roses that were attached on the shoes. Yeah, even the shoes had lace. It's completely crazy. I think people back then really took care of their clothing, because this must have been horribly expensive. Just for your imagination, I think this lace, this small one, it took me about half an hour to make 10 centimeters. And I think with this one, it was like 2 hours for 10 centimeters. So you can imagine how long this takes and always has taken to produce. The worst I have ever done, I must say, was a technique which is called Valenciennes. It is so beautiful, but unfortunately, okay, I was not trained at that time. I did it the first time, but I needed 8 hours to do 2 centimeters, and it was about 4 centimeters wide, so it was not a lot. And yeah, 8 hours for 2 centimeters. It was crazy. It almost made me mad, but I finished it in the end, so it was okay. So, time for some book recommendations. If you're willing to learn how to make bobbin lace and to teach it yourself, as I did, which is actually really crazy, I have some books you definitely need. And if you are taking classes, you will need them as well. So, as I already said, this was the first book I ever had. It's quite good. It's called Klöppelkurs by Ulrike Löhr. I am not completely sure, but I think there is an English version as well. Yeah, it includes basic techniques like braid laces, and also, let's see, yeah, torchon laces, and even some really difficult ones. But if you try to work yourself through this book, you'll definitely need another one also from Ulrike Löhr, which will help you at several times. This is just great. You don't really have to understand German to work with this book, because it is full of really good drawings. Like here, you always have a technical drawing that explains what you have to do. And I think this is really important for everyone, even for experts, because it's like every technique you could possibly imagine is explained here. It's completely crazy. Another book I really loved for beginners is this one. It's from the 1970s. That's why it has these great colors. It's all a type of lace that's called torchon. Yeah, it's really nicely made up. So you start with something really easy, and then you can evolve, and it becomes harder and harder every time, and bigger and bigger. They have really, really sweet ones like these. Yeah, and then there is one more. I had not discovered it when I was a beginner, but I really must say it's great for the start because it's really, really detailed as well. It's a French book. I definitely know that there is a German version and an English one as well. I bought the French one because I wanted to improve my French. Yeah, the cool thing about this is that they have so many pictures. Yeah, they made all these samples with very big thread in different colors, so you can see really well what the hell's going on here. It's cool. Okay, so if you'd like to go to classes or attend online classes about bobbin lace making, there's one thing I can really recommend. There's a German teacher that really gives online classes as well. Her name is Martina Wolter-Kampmann. And I think even the online classes are in different languages or with subtitles, so it works. Yes, if you want to have more information about me and my work, I'd be happy if you search me on Instagram, because till this day I have no homepage. You find me under the name Dentelle Sauvage. Yeah, it's French and it's complicated and it sounds cool, but yeah, you will find me, definitely. So, thank you for having me. Bye.